Let's say that you and your partner have been fighting a lot lately, or you don't fight about anything. Anything. You just never talk anymore. Where can you go if you want relationship advice? Oh, let us count the ways. There are books, 60,000 titles about relationships on Amazon, 70,000 on marriage specifically.
Looks like we're diving deep into Don Miguel Ruiz's The Mastery of Love today. And let me tell you, this book, it doesn't mess around.
There are podcasts.
The partner who escalates instantly when their spouse expresses mild frustration. The reaction is wildly disproportionate to what just happened.
Reality TV.
You're emotionally tying yourself to people who aren't even present with you. I'm here.
In your feed, you will find a staggering number of social media technotherapists, some credentialed and some not.
If he pulls away every time you get close, this is for you. Not because you did something wrong, but because you might be sending the exact texts that make an avoidant shut down completely.
And let's not forget the new, out-of-the-box emotional support companion, the AI chatbot.
Those I spoke with said both they and their partner would text with Claude or ChatGPT about their problems, and then the chatbot would diagnose some issues and give them suggestions on how to move forward. Another told me his wife used ChatGPT for advice on what to say during an argument, and he had to ask her point blank if she really believed what she was saying.
While all these resources might help develop some understanding around your relationship problems, they fall short in one essential way. They are not truly engaging with you to understand the nuance of your situation. And they certainly aren't engaging with your spouse or partner.
People, when they're upset and hurt, that confirmation bias window is open. And you go in, you type into AI what happened. People don't do what's very, very important, which is to try to understand the other person's perspective, and they can't understand the other person's perspective unless that other person shares it, and the person that feels hurt can listen to it without themselves becoming dysregulated.
If we think about the relationship as a dance between members of the couple and you're engaging with a bot, the bot is going to validate your experience. It's going to affirm what you're doing. It may even give you some helpful tips about things you could modify about your behavior, but it's not going to understand your partner, their part of the dance, or how those things intersect with one another.
In this episode of the Ohio State University Inspire podcast, we hear from two alumna, both relationship therapists, and an Ohio State associate professor who trains couple and family therapists. We discuss why, with a plethora of marital and relationship advice available, it's still a good idea for couples to seek help from licensed professional therapists. And we address the sticking points, those messy arguments, infidelity, whether childhood attachment really impacts adult relationships, and of course, sex. I'm Robin Chenoweth. Inspire is a production of the College of Education and Human Ecology. If you like what you hear, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And to learn more about the topics we cover, sign up for the Inspire podcast newsletter using the link in our episode notes. Couple therapy has been around since the 1930s, but dramatically shifted in the 1960s and 70s with the family therapy revolution. That's when prominent models of systemic therapy began coming onto the scene. Systemic therapy considers the orbits in which people spin, their relationships, social networks, and environment, focusing on interactions among people, not just on individuals themselves. The upshot is, systemic therapy works. Research shows that behavioral marital therapy, for one, is significantly more effective than no treatment. And while most people think that divorce is on the rise, it has been declining since the early 1980s, at least among heterosexual women younger than 50, according to Pew Research. But some things, like arguments over money, jealousy, and how to load the dishwasher, really haven't changed. other issues like polyamorous relationships and problems surrounding pornography addiction have. I asked our alumna and researcher about the ways couple therapy has evolved.
My name is Allison MacArthur, and I'm a clinical psychologist. I graduated in 1994 from human ecology with the marriage and family therapy clinic training. I went on to get my certification as a psychologist.
My name is Rinda Ross. I graduated from human ecology with the emphasis on marriage and family therapy. I am the professor at Capital University and have been there for 28 years. But in the meantime, I do private practice.
I'm Ashley Landers. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Human Sciences in the College of Education and Human Ecology. And I am a family therapist for nearly 20 years. I study families that intersect with the child welfare system.
Well, I think we expect more from our marriages than we have in a long time. And so I think more people are wanting more information about how to have a good relationship.
You two have been practicing for, 30, help me here with the math here.
Probably 40 years.
40 years. Has there been a change over time, do you think?
Absolutely. I think over the time that I've been in the field, people really understand that there's a dance. What does one person do, and then how does the other person react, and then how does the other person react? And family therapy is a little different than individual therapy in that we talk about the dance, how can you identify it, common differences, common ways of communicating, and then we have each person make a change. So things happen faster. Because they're both working on changing the dance or the system.
I think the field of couple and family therapy has come a long way. Becoming its own kind of spin-off of our field or its own domain was a difficult thing at times, but we've also had some really foundational couple therapists like John Gottman and Sue Johnson who have really pushed forward evidence-based practices. So we've come a long way. Couples therapy is becoming more and more common and people are engaging in it. And because they're able to share those stories, it becomes destigmatized for other people. I mean, we have young couples in our clinic in the 20s and 30s coming to couples therapy voluntarily, oftentimes to try to prevent difficult things from happening in the future. And that's like a radical transformation from, 20 or 30 years ago when people kind of did it shamefully or felt embarrassed by it.
How much do you think social media might have contributed to that?
A lot of people, they're watching podcasts and clips from Instagram, whatever. And while there's a bad side of that, one of the things that I think has happened is people are interested in attachment theory.
Maybe this is new to you. Attachment theory developed 60 years ago to explain why babies are distressed when separated from their parents. Secure children in the study cried, but were comforted by parents upon their return and settled. Insecurely attached children had caregivers who were dismissive, distracted, overbearing, or even threatening. Those children kept crying, or worse, didn't respond at all when their parents returned. Years later, researchers began to see correlations between attachment styles in infancy to those in adulthood. The book Attached: The New Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love exploded onto the scene in 2012, selling 3 million copies, finding its way into the hands of the mystified, anxiously attached, and love avoidant. It also resonated with the queer community. Even now, multiple social media subgroups and playlists are devoted to the topic. Ashley Landers.
Social media has definitely shaped the conversation, but I follow like the Gottman Love Lab and John Gottman. They post on social media regularly these little tips, a few minutes of what do you think with your partner. They're also responding to other like lay people talking about their experience and what they do with their partner and commenting on, yeah, that's a great relationship maintenance behavior. So I think that there's a lot of good information that can be out there, but there can also be a little bit of like pathologizing or blaming your partner for the difficulties that you're encountering.
It's very hard when you're in a relationship with someone not to get super defensive and upset. So where does that work begin? It begins with us, not finding someone to validate everything that we're saying and being really kind to us. Because by the end of that chatbot conversation with you, you might have decided, well, I'm not going to be able to have a relationship with this person. They're just too narcissistic. And that's happened as a result of you and a chatbot.
Have you had clients come to you with those kinds of conclusions from what they learned on AI?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's about, well, I didn't really want to see a therapist. If the other person also is afraid to be judged, or maybe they have more an avoidant attachment style, they're scared of therapy because you're in a one-down position. People sometimes have a hard time with that, and then they go straight to AI, or they're really open to any sort of TikTok video or something somebody shares with them from their friend. Oh, this sounds like your partner. And so you're just primed to have a reality that hasn't been tested or challenged.
The bots are not systemic thinkers, right? So they take the perspective of the person that's engaging with them. They're only getting one side of the equation. A good couples therapist can look at a relationship and see more than the sum of just the two individual parts, right? They're seeing this interactional dance or behaviors exchanged amongst the underlying meaning and attachment of those things, history, legacy. There's a lot to it that a bot simply probably is not going to get.
I think all therapists should be trained in family therapy because we're all in a system. I do see people sometimes, just like with chatbot, being validated by an individual therapist because they're only bringing what they're bringing to the therapy. Mm-hmm. And even if I'm working with individuals, I'm thinking about the system. I'm thinking about the dynamics.
I don't wanna love you anymore.
So how does this all play out in relationships and in therapy? Avoidant and anxious attachments, defensiveness, emotions running high, and yet very often an earnest desire to make the relationship right again. I asked some people to voice questions for our therapists.
Why do we keep having the exact same fight?
Because it's not getting resolved. In strategic couple therapy, they would say it's the ironic process that keeps the problem going. Actually, the very strategy that you do is actually harming the relationship more than it's helping the relationship. So I'm annoyed with Kevin for leaving the dishes in the sink, and so I'm bringing it up to him, and I'm acting out and saying things to him in a way that then we get in this argument, and actually it doesn't help get the dishes done or get them into the dishwasher any closer. It just keeps this wedge between us. Sometimes it's about finding something to break out of that loop, to do something different, and or to make some compromises as a couple around how you're going to solve this problem. But if people are having the same argument over and over again, it's just a sign that they don't feel heard and validated and understood by their partner, and that there's no resolution that's been brought yet. It feels unsolved.
It's just about a chronic feeling of not being respected, right? But I've also worked with couples who've been together a long time, and they always have those areas of perpetual disagreement. And so at some point, you have to just stop living in the past. And you just need to take today and move forward, bringing things up that are current and saying more what you need is helpful. So how can I approach my partner in a way that is going to be sort of what Gottman calls a gentle startup, in a way that is not going to immediately result in defensiveness of the other person.
Researcher John Gottman uses the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of biblical notoriety as a metaphor for communication styles that can predict the end of a relationship. Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Sound familiar? The antidote to criticism or attacking your partner's core character is the gentle startup. Honey, I really want to cook that dinner that you love, but I can't if I don't have a clean kitchen. Can you do the dishes like you promised?
The other side of the defensiveness is being appreciative that the person's bringing it to your attention. So like there are magic words of like, oh, thank you for letting me know about that. Or, oh, okay, I hear you. The couples that I think work best are ones that they're on this side of the table and the problem is on the other side of the table.
Oh, that's a great way of thinking about it.
Instead of them being on opposite sides of the table. So if I can get them to look at a problem and say, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? Gottman talks about defensiveness and stonewalling and some things that are a real problem in marriages. But if the person who's defensive works on saying, oh, I appreciate you telling me that. Let's figure this out. We can do this. 2 heads are better than 1. When things aren't resolved and someone comes to me and says, well, she's hanging on to this or he's hanging on to this issue, It's because it hasn't been resolved. Well, let's resolve it, and then you don't have to hang on to it.
Another question.
How are attachment styles affecting my relationship?
If someone's anxiously attached, they might cling to someone, or they might not say things because they're worried that they might be rejected. But if they're avoidantly attached, then what they can do is just avoid things. And I would have to say that I've seen more divorces over avoidance than anything. Bankruptcies, intimacy issues. If someone avoids conflict, then the other person might bring it up, and then it results in an argument or a fight, and then in order not to have the marriage end, they don't talk about it anymore. And so lots of things go unsaid, and it builds up, and eventually it sort of ruins the intimacy, ruins the relationship. So it's something that I address often in couples, is if someone's avoiding, it's a serious issue in a relationship.
There's probably good reason to think that our attachment from early childhood with our primary caregivers serves us as kind of a working model for our romantic relationships. Not always, but a lot of times our attachment style is something that carries forward into those friendships and romantic relationships into adulthood. And so folks who are a little bit more avoidant or dismissive, they can have more challenges regardless of a person's attachment style, no matter what the combination is. If couples have these points where they're divided and they can't resolve the conflict and they just kind of say, okay, we just leave it there, it typically becomes like an attachment rupture. It becomes a divider in the relationship, this little wedge that's kind of existing between the two of us, at this icky space that we don't like, that we're not comfortable with, but that we can't fix. And so that's a lot of what couples come to couples therapy for, is that they have these issues that kind of keep coming up over and over again, like the same ironic processes that kind of keep them arguing with one another over and over again.
Here's something that's top of mind among many couples, especially those lucky enough to be in long-term relationships.
How do we get the spark back?
Sometimes I'll see people who have enough resources and they don't argue about typical things like money and children and all that, in-laws, whatever, but they have lost their way because they haven't invested in their own relationship. It's very interesting because what's happened is they've figured out ways to work through all kinds of disagreements, but just have not maintained a sense of intimacy.
When they come into therapy, as soon as we have put the fire out, if there is one, then I always say it's the best thing you give your children, certainly the best thing they give themselves, is to date each other. And I have rules. The rules on the date are that they don't get to talk about problems with children, problems in the relationship, the never-ending list at home, or finances.
Agree.
A lot of people have said, thanks a lot for an awkward night.
What did you have to talk about? Right. You got to work it, don't you?
So what did you used to talk about when you dated? Or there's a great set of cards, uncommon questions for couples. It'll be things like, what music would you bring on a desert island? Or something that's just interesting to talk about, because as we grow in a relationship, sometimes we change. And sometimes our friends know more about our changes than our spouse.
True. So if they say, there's nothing I have to talk about, then I'm like, then go see a show or a movie. Do you have a band you like? Go to that.
Just resuming an activity that you once enjoyed with one another, even if you're not talking.
Or a new one, because the stories that I have heard about people doing interesting things, you know, the topiary garden behind the library downtown, someone found that and did a picnic, and lovely stories.
I think it's the idea that, like, dating your spouse or courting your spouse, there was something that drew you to this person. You liked them when you first met them, and recalling that memory can sometimes put positive memory at the beginning of the relationship to kind of bring it back.
If you wild out of the weekend, then let me show you all that you've been missing. I got enough, can let me give it.
But if we think of it like a teeter-totter, all of those negative interactions that you've had with your spouse, the times where you haven't been able to resolve conflict, they become very heavy on that teeter-totter, and those negative interactions outweigh the positive. And so the idea is that we want to try to reinforce positive interactions to kind of set the teeter-totter back in balance. And so engaging in positive dating kind of behaviors, or doing the things you did when you were courting each other, like, that's when relationships fall stale, is when you stopped dating your spouse. Some time to kind of reinforce these positive interactions and to find each other.
Gosh, I just realized I never really actually talked to you all about sex.
That's very interesting because when we were in training, they said, you're going to have to talk about finances and sex.
Yeah. Sex comes up in many romantic relationships as a point of either, pleasure or contention. And oftentimes it comes down to two things, the frequency and the type of contact. So most couples are quite satisfied with the quality of the contact that they're having. There's oftentimes more of a discrepancy about the frequency. So clarifying that and then looking at how the sexual response cycle changes based on sex assigned at birth and gender and our expressions based on age. So thinking about there are reasons that someone who's perimenopausal or menopausal may have some difficulty getting lubricated, right? So just basic psychoeducation about the sexual response cycle and how it evolves across time, and in heterosexual couples, teaching men about women and women about men and explaining a little bit about that cycle. I think sexual difficulties are much more common than we ever thought that they were. And while the DSM might not diagnose a lot of things that are, sexual behaviors, they are a pressing thing that bring people to therapy. And oftentimes it's said as intimacy, but we're really talking about sex or sexual contact.
Sex in a marriage changes over time. The early kinds of things that were so satisfactory and you didn't have to talk as much, you really do after you really have to talk about sex, and nobody's raised to feel comfortable with that. If people are having sexual issues for any reason, then sex itself makes them very anxious. And trying to have discussions with individuals about, well, what do you like? How much do you communicate with their partner? Sometimes there's some shame around what makes them feel good. If you think about it, most people, especially women, are raised to not touch themselves and not know what they like and not know what feels good. So therefore, it becomes a taboo in a way that's not helpful at all in their partnership. There's sensate focus, all these really different kinds of interventions that you can do, but even those can become a little transactional if you're not working on the romance part of it. So sometimes having couples write each other a love letter, it can be short, not typed, not text, or recalling a time early in their relationship when they had a sexual experience with each other and recounting that and what was so great about it. That can sometimes normalize it in their world, if you will, so it doesn't feel as intrusive to talk about it or bring it up.
As you work with younger and younger couples, are they more open with it? Is it becoming not such a taboo topic anymore?
I don't know if you could say that in general. I do find that there are young people who, even when they're dating, will just be saying like, well, so what do you like? What don't you like? What makes you uncomfortable? Where can I touch you? I mean, it's just delightful. But then there are also a lot of people that don't get that information, and certainly not in sex education. I still ask the students, did you learn anything about how a woman has an orgasm?
And they didn't.
And they're like, no. There's a really good book called Come As You Are. It's really good for both men and women. We're just so in the dark ages with women's sexuality.
I think the next thing is to get people to talk about how just because you're so aroused by erotic literature and pornography doesn't mean that that is real. What is real is when somebody says to you, this is what I like, and how that affects their body in ways that are pleasurable. I think there's a real big issue. People who are pretty dependent on pornography to feel excited about sex and turned on, they need more and more and more of it. And then suddenly it's not about two people together. You can't get aroused as easily because you're sort of desensitized to it.
Yeah, it can be a big divider for folks. And I think whenever couples ask, should we introduce a third party to the relationship? And I'm like, no, probably not. You should probably work on the relationship now. And when you're solid, if you want to add something, that's fine. Pornography is a third party. When you're thinking about the intimacy that flows between two people when they're having sexual contact, most of us would agree that adding a third party to the relationship doesn't increase the intimacy between the two members. And pornography is the same. It just takes up space. It diverts our attention. It's probably not that helpful. I'm not saying that pornography can't be used as a relationship enhancer. I just haven't seen it used in that way with the couples that I've worked with. For the most part, it creates more jealousy and there's kind of a diversion of attention and less engagement with one another because of this third party. There's a whole generation of folks who had earlier introduction to pornography use and increased availability with the digital age, and how that shapes the brain, and then also how that shapes how they think about romantic relationships and unrealistic expectations of bodies. And pornography is often about sex as exchange and exploitation is now so readily accessible, and the levels of violence that are involved in that pornography are also more egregious than some of the things that we would have seen 20, 40 years ago. So we've got to be really careful about how we're shaping sexual contact now, even amongst couples, and whether they use it or don't use it.
I do want to ask about the polyamory, though. Are you noticing it in your practices?
I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on it, but I do know that when someone is truly polyamorous, they have very strict boundaries around that. When it works for people, everybody knows each other, everybody knows what their role is. It's a problem when one person in a couple is less interested in it than the other.
We've engaged in therapy with thruples or with open relationships, but those dynamics are really different depending on the couple and each member of the couple and what's allowed or not allowed. These are really complicated relationships, and I don't think we've done a good job in family science research to really represent those relationships, to capture their experiences and what's helpful. I think polyamorous couples who are doing it well have a lot to teach the rest of us about how to help other couples navigate these. Kink and queer community and polyamorous community know a lot about what works in relationships and how to do this with respect. They probably should just teach us about that.
One last question.
Should we break up or should we stay together?
We cannot tell them that answer. What we can say is, here's the strengths of your relationship, and here are some areas that are pretty significant. Especially, you could do a whole episode on people who cross the boundary or unfaithful. If they don't have the same goal, or if I sense there might be something I don't know, then I might refer that person to a colleague to say, why don't you figure out what it is you want? If you want to work on this, then come back. Because when people are at a place where one wants to stay and one isn't sure, that can be kind of tricky.
By the time we get people into couples therapy, we want them to commit to working on the relationship. Like, it is very sabotaging if someone is secretly checking out of the relationship. My loyalty is to the relationship, not just the individual members, right? And I don't think that we tell people that they should or shouldn't stay together. I will say that people tend to end up in the same relationships over and over again.
Really?
It's a different player, but the same kind of person.
Why is that?
People just tend to attract the same kind of partners. I mean, we have relationship patterns. In order to get somebody better, you got to do that work on yourself, and you got to be ready, right? And having seen people across 2-3 relationships myself in therapy, that gets really challenging. So thinking that leaving a relationship will somehow make us healthier for the next relationship is kind of a falsity. If you take a year of being single and you grieve and you go through every holiday by yourself and you really work on your stuff and you get ready for that next person to come, sure, you're going to be in a better place.
I do want to ask about the infidelity, and I'm wondering if it's the biggest precipitator of a breakup.
Sometimes what brings them there is somebody's been unfaithful, or they're saying they want to leave and the other person doesn't know they're being unfaithful. When there's been emotional unfaithfulness, that's been salvageable. If somebody really wants to be with somebody else, they're not going to cut it off. They might agree to, but that other person is the competition. And then suddenly you've got a very different situation.
I see more emotional affairs and emotional vulnerability that's happening where people are disengaging from their partner and they're not necessarily acting sexually, but they might be engaging emotionally and going to that person, texting with someone for support, or even sometimes we see things where it's more like digital expressions or even images and things that are exchanged or flirtatious behavior. And so it may not have had any physical contact, but there's all kinds of ways to be unfaithful in your relationship.
It's oftentimes a real wake-up call for a couple. I've had lots of couples who have said, wow, we didn't realize how sort of devitalized our relationship has been, and we need to notch this up. We need to think about this. And so most couples do stay together.
Do they? Even after one has been unfaithful?
Yeah. If they can resolve the filters that they have in their own head, and if they can work on the dynamics of the relationship. I mean, the ones I find that are most successful are when both person says, this is a symptom of a devitalized relationship. We have gotten so far apart that I tell my coworker more than I'm telling you at home, or this person thinks I'm more interesting than you do. All of the things that devitalize a marriage. And when they come in and they're like, we have to do something about this, it really can be quite remarkable. It can be the wake-up call that marriages need. If that's how they handle it, it's wonderful.
And the whole field of affair recovery, like rupture repair work, I think has come a long way. If it's gone off track, it can always get back on track. I mean, couples find their way back to each other after really hard times, after the death of a child, after an affair, after lots of different things. They find their way back to each other. And so we have to start studying those couples more and more, which is, I think, what Gottman is doing, is trying to say, like, what are these people doing that is so good, that is so helpful for their relationship?
Gottman and others are finding clues by studying happy relationships. Many of their interactions are surprisingly simple. Those couples turn toward their partner to acknowledge them when they speak. They kiss at least 6 seconds before leaving for work. They express appreciation daily for the things that their partners do. Over time, these brief moments of kindness act as a buffer, a kind of storm wall against rough times.
And those are the voices we want to amplify, not just the fact that half of all marriages end in divorce. Womp womp, we know that. But there's a lot of people who stay together long term. And so how do they make it work? And there's something magical that they're doing in that teeter-totter to make those positive engagements with one another.